Commander Jiho had seen many things in his 30 years of military service, but nothing like this. The massive holographic display in front of him showed hundreds of alien warships moving toward Earth's peaceful colonies. These weren't just any ships. They were Vulcan vessels, painted in dark colors and covered with weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Vulcans had been conquering worlds for over 200 years. Every species they met either joined them willingly or got wiped out completely. No one had ever successfully fought back against their advanced technology and ruthless tactics. Jiho's hands trembled slightly as he counted the enemy ships. 500 vessels, each one the size of a small city. His own defensive fleet had maybe 50 ships, most of them outdated patrol boats that hadn't seen real combat in decades. Lieutenant Minji sat at her communication station, her young face pale with worry. She had graduated from the academy just 6 months ago and had never experienced anything more dangerous than tracking space debris. Now she was about to witness the possible end of human civilization. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission from their lead ship," she said, her voice barely steady. "They want to talk." Jiho nodded grimly. He knew what this meant. The Vulcans always offered surrender terms before attacking. It was their way of showing the galaxy that they gave their enemies a chance, even though that chance was always the same: submit or die. The main screen flickered to life, showing the terrifying face of General Tekvar. The alien looked like a giant insect, with multiple eyes, sharp mandibles, and skin that seemed to be made of living metal. His reputation preceded him. He had personally overseen the destruction of 47 worlds. "Pathetic humans," the general said, his voice sounding like grinding metal. "Your primitive species has been judged by the Galactic Council. You are too weak, too stupid, and too violent to join civilized society. We offer you one chance. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick and painless." The other officers on the bridge looked terrified. Some of them had families on the colonies that were about to be attacked. Others were thinking about their friends and loved ones back on Earth. Everyone knew that the Vulcans had never lost a war. But something strange happened to Commander Jiho's face. Instead of fear or despair, a slow smile began to spread across his weathered features. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made smart people very nervous. "General Tekvar," Jiho said calmly, "I want to thank you for something." The alien's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Thank me? For what, human?" "For giving us a reason to stop pretending we're civilized," Jiho replied, his smile getting wider. "You see, we humans have been playing nice for almost 3 centuries now. We've been peaceful, diplomatic, and reasonable. But deep down, we've been really, really bored." The general's multiple eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "We've been waiting for someone stupid enough to threaten our families," Jiho continued. "Someone arrogant enough to think they could just walk into our space and take what they wanted. Someone like you." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Lieutenant Minji stared at her commander in shock. "Sir, what do we do now?" Jiho's smile became genuinely cheerful for the first time. "Minji, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Vulcans just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Then contact all human colonies and outposts. Use the old codes, the ones we haven't touched in 300 years. "Which codes, sir?" "The war codes, Lieutenant. All of them." The morning started like any other day on Kepler 442b. Farmers were checking their crops, children were playing in the streets, and families were having breakfast together. The colony had been peaceful for over 50 years, home to 3,000 people who had never known war or violence. Then the Vulcan ships appeared in the sky. The attack lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, there was nothing left but smoking ruins and silence. The final transmission from the colony was heartbreaking. A woman crying for her children, a man screaming for help, and then nothing but static. Back on Earth, Admiral Sunwoo received the terrible news while she was drinking her morning coffee. She had been expecting this call ever since Commander Jiho's encounter with the Vulcans, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. "Ma'am, we've lost contact with Kepler 442b. the communication officer reported, his voice shaking. All 3,000 colonists are presumed dead. Sunwoo set down her coffee cup carefully. She had served in the military for 40 years, but Earth had been at peace for so long that she had never actually seen real combat. None of them had. The last major war had ended 3 centuries ago. Within hours, more bad news arrived. The Vulcans had attacked 2 more colonies, New Seoul and Busan Station. 15,000 more people were dead. Their homes destroyed, their dreams turned to ash. The Emergency Defense Council met in the deepest bunker beneath Geneva. These were the most powerful people on Earth, senators, generals, and corporate leaders who made decisions that affected billions of lives. But right now, they all looked like scared children. Senator Heejin was the first to speak. She was a grandmother of 6, and the thought of alien monsters threatening her family made her voice shake with fear. "Admiral, what are our options? How do we protect our people?" "The Vulcans have technology we can't match," admitted General Chanwoo, the head of Earth's space forces. "Their weapons are centuries ahead of ours. Their ships are faster and stronger. By every military calculation, we should surrender now and hope they show mercy." "Mercy?" Senator Daeho laughed bitterly. "They just murdered 18,000 innocent people for fun. They're broadcasting the destruction across the galaxy like it's some kind of entertainment show. These aren't soldiers. They're monsters." Admiral Sunwoo had been silent during the debate, but now she stood up slowly. Her face was completely calm, which somehow made her more frightening than if she had been angry. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly, "you're all thinking about this wrong. You're worried about their technology, their weapons, their numbers, but you're forgetting something important." "What's that?" asked Senator Heejin. "You're forgetting what humans are really like when someone threatens our families." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Earth's history, the wars, the conflicts, the incredible violence that humans were capable of when pushed too far. But that was ancient history. Modern humans were civilized, peaceful, reasonable people. "Admiral," Senator Daeho said carefully, "what exactly are you suggesting?" Sunwoo's smile was colder than space itself. "I'm suggesting we stop pretending to be something we're not. The Vulcans think they're dealing with sheep. It's time to show them they're actually dealing with wolves." She turned to the main computer terminal and entered a code that hadn't been used in 300 years. "I'm activating the Prometheus protocols," she announced. "All of them." The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop working. The Prometheus protocols were humanity's darkest secrets, weapons and strategies so terrible that they had been locked away after the last Great War, with most people hoping they would never be needed again. But the Vulcans had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had reminded humanity what it felt like to be truly angry. Captain Minho had never expected to command a warship. For most of his career, he had been flying cargo vessels and passenger shuttles between Earth and the peaceful colonies. War was something he had only read about in history books, ancient stories from a time when humans fought each other over land and resources. But today, everything changed. The UES Retribution was massive, over 2 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could crack a moon in half. It had been built during humanity's last great conflict 3 centuries ago, then quietly hidden away when peace finally came. Most people had forgotten it even existed. The ship's corridors were dark and cold when Minho first stepped aboard. Dust covered everything, and the air smelled stale and old. But within hours, thousands of engineers and technicians were swarming through the vessel, bringing it back to life with amazing speed. "Captain, this is incredible," said Ensign Soo-young, his young navigator. She was staring at the weapons display with wide eyes. "I had no idea we had technology like this. These particle cannons could destroy an entire enemy fleet." Minho nodded grimly. The Retribution wasn't just a warship. It was a monument to human ingenuity when faced with extinction. Every system had been designed by people who understood that sometimes peaceful species needed to become very dangerous very quickly. All around Earth's solar system, similar awakenings were happening. What looked like ordinary space stations suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems. Innocent-looking asteroids opened up to release squadrons of fighter craft. Even the traffic control satellites around Earth turned out to have military-grade sensors and communication arrays. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the system," called out Lieutenant Jihoon from the communication station. "The Seoul defense grid is fully operational. Every hidden platform, every secret weapon, every classified project from the last 300 years. It's all coming online." Minho walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the fleet assembling around Earth. 200 ships of various sizes hung in space, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Some were ancient dreadnoughts, like the Retribution. Others were sleek new vessels that had been disguised as research ships or merchant carriers. But what struck him most was the crews. These weren't the same peaceful humans who had been exploring the galaxy and making friends with alien species. Something had changed in their eyes. The Velkan attack on the colonies had awakened something primal and dangerous. "Captain," Soo-young said quietly, "I'm getting messages from civilian volunteers, thousands of them. Retired military personnel, cargo pilots, even doctors and teachers. They all want to fight." "What are they saying?" Minho asked. "Most of them are asking the same question. When do we leave to make the Velkans pay for what they did?" Minho opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. His voice carried to every ship, every station, every human settlement in the solar system. "Attention, all vessels and stations. This is Captain Minho aboard the UES Retribution. I know many of you are afraid right now. The Velkans have superior technology, more ships, and centuries of military experience. By every logical calculation, we should lose this war." He paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. "But the Velkans made one critical error in their planning. They assumed that because we've been peaceful, we're weak. They thought that because we're reasonable, we won't fight back. They believed that because we're civilized, we've forgotten how to be savage." The communication channel was completely silent. Every human in the solar system was listening. They're about to learn that peace doesn't make humans soft. It just makes us very, very patient. "For 3 centuries, we've been building, learning, and preparing. We've created weapons they can't imagine, and strategies they won't see coming." Minho's smile was cold and predatory. "The Velkans think they're hunting sheep. It's time to show them what happens when sheep turn out to be wolves in disguise. All ships prepare for combat operations. We're going hunting." Captain Tajan had always been good at acting. As a young man, he had dreamed of being on stage, performing for audiences, and making people believe in stories. He never imagined that one day, his acting skills would be the difference between life and death for his entire species. The Velkan scout ship Drathmore was prowling through the asteroid belt, looking for easy targets. The aliens had been doing this for weeks, finding damaged human ships, boarding them, stealing anything valuable, and then killing the survivors. It was their favorite sport. When they spotted Taijan's cargo vessel drifting helplessly with a damaged hull, they thought they had found another easy victim. The ship's distress beacon was broadcasting weekly, and life support readings showed that the crew was dying slowly from oxygen loss. "Perfect," chittered the Velkan boarding party leader, a nasty creature named Vexthok. "Another pathetic human ship to raid. Board it quickly and take anything useful." The Velkans docked with the cargo ship and cut through the airlock with their plasma torches. They moved through the dark corridors with their weapons ready, expecting to find terrified humans begging for mercy. Instead, they found Captain Tajan lying on the bridge floor, bleeding from what looked like a serious head wound. His breathing was shallow and he appeared to be barely conscious. "Human," Vexthok said, kicking Tajan roughly. "Where is your crew? What cargo are you carrying?" Tajan looked up with desperate eyes. "Please," he whispered weakly, "don't hurt me, the cargo. It's medical supplies for the colonies that were attacked. People are dying." The Velkans laughed at his pathetic display. These humans were even weaker than they had expected. Vexthok raised his weapon, ready to end the humans' misery. That's when Tajan's expression changed completely. The fear disappeared from his eyes, replaced by something that made the Velkan take a step backward. The wounded captain smiled, not a desperate smile, but the confident grin of someone who had just won a game. "Gotcha," Tajan said cheerfully. Before the Velkans could react, every cargo container on the ship exploded simultaneously, but instead of medical supplies, 10,000 tiny drones poured out like angry wasps. Each drone was no bigger than a coin, but they were armed with molecular disruptors. weapons that could break apart alien armor at the atomic level. The Velkans screamed as the microdrones swarmed over them, but their cries were cut short as the tiny machines ate through their ship's hull, life support systems and weapons. In 30 seconds, the Drathmore was a dead hulk floating in space. Tejan stood up, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. The serious head wound had been nothing more than makeup and fake blood. "Command, this is Cargo Ship 7. The trap worked perfectly. 1 Velkan scout ship eliminated." 300 light-years away, Chief Engineer Nari was watching the operation from her secret command center, buried deep inside an asteroid. Her screens showed dozens of similar encounters happening across human space. Every helpless cargo ship was actually a deadly trap waiting for Velkan raiders. "Beautiful work, Tejan," she said into her communicator. "How did the new drones perform?" "Like a swarm of mechanical piranhas," Tejan replied happily. "The Velkans never saw it coming. They expected us to fight like civilized soldiers, following rules and regulations. Instead, we're fighting like humans." Nari smiled as she uploaded new instructions to the next wave of decoy ships. For 3 centuries, humanity had been peaceful explorers and traders, but before that, they had been the most creative and dangerous species on their planet. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars by being smarter, more adaptable, and more ruthless than anything else in their environment. The Velkans had superior technology and more experience in conventional warfare. But they had never faced an enemy that turned cargo ships into bombs, disguised weapons as medical supplies, and treated war like a deadly game of chess. "Attention all decoy vessels," Nari broadcast to her hidden fleet. "Phase 1 is complete. The Velkans now think all human cargo ships are dangerous. Time for Phase 2. Make them afraid of everything else we've built." She pulled up the schematics for humanity's next surprise. Mining ships that were actually mobile weapon platforms, passenger liners equipped with cloaking devices, and space stations that could transform into battleships at a moment's notice. The Velkans thought they were fighting a primitive species. They were about to discover that humans had turned deception into an art form. General Thekvar had conquered 47 worlds in his long military career. He had faced enemies with advanced technology, superior numbers, and desperate courage. But he had never encountered anything like the humans, and it was driving him insane. The holographic battle display in his command center showed the impossible truth. His forces outnumbered the humans 10 to 1. His ships were faster, his weapons more powerful, his soldiers better trained. By every military principle he had learned in 2 centuries of warfare, he should have crushed humanity weeks ago. Instead, he was losing badly. "Sir, urgent report from the Rigel system," called Captain Vextel, his second-in-command. The younger Velkan's voice was shaking with confusion and fear. "The humans have somehow taken control of our entire defensive network. Our own weapons are now firing at us." Thekvar's mandibles clicked with frustration. How is that possible? The Rigel system was protected by our most advanced security protocols, the TAI. "Humans didn't break our codes, sir. They convinced our computer systems that they were authorized Velkan personnel. Apparently, they've been studying our language and culture for months, learning how to impersonate us perfectly." Before Thekvar could respond, another officer reported more bad news. "General, our supply depot at Proxima has been completely destroyed. The humans used our own cargo ships against us. They loaded them with explosives and rammed them into our storage facilities. What about our patrol fleets? Where were they when this happened?" "That's the strange part, sir. The humans somehow knew exactly when our patrols would be away from their posts. It's like they can predict our movements before we make them." Thekvar studied the tactical display more carefully. The human attacks weren't random. They were perfectly coordinated across dozens of star systems. Every strike hit at exactly the right moment, when Velkan defenses were weakest. "Sir, we're intercepting human communications," reported the intelligence officer. "But their messages don't make sense. Listen to this." The recording crackled to life, filled with human voices speaking in their strange melodic language. But what shocked Thekvar wasn't what they were saying, it was how they were saying it. The humans were laughing. "Rodriguez, did you see the look on that Velkan commander's face when our broken ship suddenly started shooting back?" One voice chuckled. "Priceless, I've got the whole thing recorded. We should submit it to the military humor channel. Another replied, Wait, here's the best part. They actually believed we were surrendering, like we would give up just because we're outnumbered 3-1. The voices dissolved into more laughter, followed by the sounds of weapons fire and explosions. But even during combat, the humans continued joking and encouraging each other. This is Strike Team Delta calling command, came another transmission that made Thekvar's blood run cold. We've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that we're completely surrounded by Velkan forces with no hope of escape. There was a pause. Then the human continued with obvious amusement in his voice. The good news is that now we know exactly where all the enemy troops are located, beginning our assault in 3, 2, 1. The transmission ended with sounds that no civilized species should make during battle. Whoops of joy, battle cries, and what sounded suspiciously like humans singing war songs while they fought. Colonel Dayun's voice came through on a separate channel, broadcasting from behind Velkan lines, where she had somehow infiltrated their most secure base. Command, I've been observing Velkan tactical behavior for the past week, she reported casually, as if she were discussing the weather instead of conducting impossible espionage missions. These guys fight like they're following an instruction manual. Everything is by the book. Predictable formations, standard protocols, no improvisation. She paused, and Thekvar could hear weapon fire in the background. We fight like we're trying to impress our friends and have fun at the same time. We make up new tactics on the spot, turn their own weapons against them, and treat every battle like a creative challenge. Guess who's winning? Thekvar turned off the communications with shaking claws. The humans weren't just defeating his forces, they were enjoying it. They treated war like some kind of deadly game, where the rules changed constantly, and creativity mattered more than superior firepower. For the first time in his long military career, General Thekvar was beginning to understand fear. The Velkan fortress on Altair Prime was supposed to be impossible to capture. Built into the side of a mountain, it had energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons, automated defense systems that never slept, and a garrison of 5,000 elite Velkan warriors. For 50 years, it had been the center of Velkan military power in this sector of the galaxy. Sergeant Wonho looked at the massive fortress through his binoculars and scratched his head thoughtfully. He was a simple man who had spent most of his military career fixing broken equipment and training new recruits. But the war had changed everything, and now he found himself leading a special operations team deep behind enemy lines. Sarge, this place is a nightmare, whispered Private Una, studying the fortress's defenses through her scope. Look at those weapon towers. They've got enough firepower to level a city. And the energy shields are military grade, probably powered by 3 separate reactors. Corporal Jinwan pointed to the patrol routes around the base. They've got guards everywhere, motion sensors, heat detectors, and automated turrets. A frontal assault would be suicide, and even a stealth approach would be nearly impossible. The rest of the squad nodded grimly. They were good soldiers, but they weren't miracle workers. Taking this fortress would require an army, not a 12-person team with limited equipment. But Wonho was smiling, which made his team nervous. They had learned to worry whenever their sergeant got that particular look in his eyes. "Okay, team, gather around," he said, pulling out a rough map of the fortress. "I've got a plan, but it's going to sound completely crazy." "How crazy?" asked Private Una. "Remember that time we convinced the Velkan fleet that our cargo ship was actually a diplomatic vessel, and they let us dock with their flagship before we blew it up?" "Yeah, that was pretty crazy." "This is crazier." Wonho pointed to the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the fortress. "We're going to split into 2 teams. Team Alpha will plant explosives on the power generators, communication arrays, and structural supports. But here's the twist. You're going to set them on a timer, not detonate them immediately." "What's Team Beta going to do?" asked Jinwan. Wonho's grin got wider. "Team Beta is going to walk up to the front door and politely ask the Velkans to surrender." The squad stared at him in stunned silence. Then Private Una started laughing. "Sarge, that's not crazy. That's completely insane. They'll shoot us on sight." "Will they?" Wonho asked. "Think about it. The Velkans have been winning this war for months. They think they're dealing with a desperate, primitive species. What's the last thing they would expect? A polite surrender. Request, Jinwan said slowly, beginning to understand. Exactly. They'll be so confused that they'll hesitate just long enough for our explosives to do their job. 20 minutes later, Wonho emerged from the forest and walked calmly toward the fortress's main gate. He had his hands raised in the universal gesture of surrender, and his expression was friendly and non-threatening. The Velkan guards spotted him immediately. Their weapons tracked his movement, but they didn't fire. This was too strange. No human had ever approached a Velkan position so openly. "Halt, human!" chittered the guard captain. "State your business or be destroyed." Wonho stopped about 10 meters from the gate and smiled politely. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Sergeant Wonho of the Human Defense Force. I'm here to inform you that this facility is now under human control. We would appreciate it if you could evacuate in an orderly fashion." The Velkans looked at each other in complete confusion. This human was either completely insane or incredibly brave. Either way, it was unprecedented. "You dare to demand our surrender?" the captain snarled. "You are one human against 5,000 Velkan warriors." "Actually," Wonho said, checking his watch, "I'm 12 humans against 5,000 Velkan warriors, but math was never my strong point." That's when Yuna's explosives went off. The fortress's shields flickered and died as the power generators exploded. The communication towers toppled over in clouds of sparks and smoke, and the main structural supports gave way, causing entire sections of the base to collapse. As chaos erupted around them, Wonho's team emerged from their hiding positions with weapons blazing. But what shocked the Velkans most wasn't the humans' tactics or their firepower. It was the fact that they were laughing and joking even in the middle of intense combat. "Nice timing on those explosives, Yuna," Wonho called out as he ducked behind cover. "Thanks, Sarge. I've been practicing," she replied cheerfully while shooting down a Velkan drone. The Velkans had never encountered an enemy that treated warfare like a deadly game. These humans fought with skill and precision, but also with joy and creativity that made them completely unpredictable. Ambassador Kenji had never expected to address the Galactic Council under these circumstances. For 30 years he had been humanity's chief diplomat, working to build peaceful relationships with alien species across the galaxy. His job had mostly involved trade negotiations, cultural exchanges, and resolving minor disputes between colonies. Today, he was announcing the end of a war that nobody thought humans could win. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, a vast, circular room that could hold representatives from over 200 different species. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing star maps, trade routes, and military positions throughout known space. It was designed to make visitors feel small and humble. But Kenji didn't feel small today. He felt proud, honorable. "Council members," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. "I stand before you today to discuss the unconditional surrender of the Velkan Empire." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Representatives from dozens of species began talking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of confusion and disbelief. The Centaurian delegate, whose species had been paying tribute to the Velkans for over a century, waved his tentacles frantically. "Impossible!" he declared. "The Velkans have been the dominant military power in this galaxy for 200 years. They have conquered 47 worlds and destroyed countless fleets." "They had conquered 47 worlds," Kenji corrected politely. Past tense. As of 6 hours ago, Admiral Sunwoo's combined fleet achieved complete orbital control over the Velkan homeworld. Their government has formally requested terms of surrender. The chamber fell into shocked silence. Many of the alien representatives had been alive when the Velkans first began their conquest campaigns. They had seen entire civilizations wiped out by Velkan forces. The idea that these unstoppable conquerors had been defeated by the peaceful humans was beyond their understanding. The Rigelian delegate, a tall crystal-like being whose species had been among the Velkans' first victims, spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "How is this possible? Human military capabilities were assessed as minimal. Your species has been peaceful for 3 centuries. Dr. Seojin stepped forward from the human delegation. She was a small, quiet woman who had spent her career studying human psychology and behavior. Her research had been largely ignored by other species, who saw humans as unremarkable compared to the more exotic aliens in the galaxy. The Council made a fundamental error in its threat assessment, she said calmly, activating her holographic display. You assumed that because humans had been peaceful, we were naturally pacifistic. This assumption was incorrect. The display showed human military statistics that made several Council members gasp. Ship production rates, weapon capabilities, and tactical innovations that had appeared seemingly overnight. Humans weren't peaceful because we were weak, Doctor. Seojin continued. We were peaceful because we were bored. For 300 years we've had no real challenges, no serious threats, no worthy opponents. We've been exploring the galaxy, making friends, and building things because we had nothing else to do. She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the part of her analysis that would change galactic politics forever. The Velkans made the mistake of giving us something to fight for. They threatened our families, destroyed our colonies, and declared us unworthy of existence. In doing so, they reminded us of something we had almost forgotten. What's that? Asked the Andromedan representative nervously. That humans are apex predators. We're not herbivores who learned to use tools. We're not omnivores who developed agriculture. We're hunters who got so good at killing that we eventually ran out of things to hunt. So we turned our predatory instincts toward exploration, science, and diplomacy instead. The chamber was completely silent now. Every alien representative was staring at the small human woman who was calmly explaining why their understanding of humanity had been completely wrong. Evolution doesn't make apex predators soft when they're not hunting, Dr. Seojin concluded. It just makes them patient. The Velkans awakened something that had been sleeping for 3 centuries, humanity's natural talent for warfare. She gestured to her display, which now showed before and after images of Velkan military positions. The destruction was thorough and systematic. The results speak for themselves. Ambassador Kenji stepped forward again. The Galactic Council now has a choice. You can continue to see humanity as the peaceful, helpful species we've been for 3 centuries, or you can remember that we're also the species that just defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy in less than 6 months, he smiled politely. We'd prefer to remain your friends. General Thekvar had prepared himself for death. When the human fleet appeared over his homeworld, he expected them to do what the Velkans had always done to defeated enemies. Complete destruction, followed by the enslavement or extermination of any survivors. Instead, he found himself sitting in a comfortable room aboard the human flagship, drinking something called coffee and discussing peace terms with Admiral Sunwoo. The room was nothing like a typical Velkan military facility. Instead of cold metal walls and harsh lighting, it had soft furniture, warm colors, and what appeared to be artwork on the walls. There were even plants growing in small containers, something no practical military vessel would waste space on. This is quite unusual, Thekvar said, his mandibles clicking nervously as he studied the treaty documents. These terms, they're not what I expected. Admiral Sunwoo looked tired but relaxed. She had been fighting this war for 6 months, and Thekvar could see the exhaustion in her eyes. But there was no hatred there, no desire for revenge. What did you expect, General? She asked, refilling his coffee cup with practiced ease. Destruction, slavery, the complete subjugation of my people. Thekvar's voice carried the weight of 2 centuries of Velkan military doctrine. That's what we would have done to you. I know, Sunwoo replied simply. We studied your military history very carefully, but that's not who we are. The treaty documents scattered across the table told an incredible story. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, the humans were offering reconstruction aid to damaged Velkan worlds. Instead of installing military governors, they were proposing cultural exchange programs and joint research projects. I don't understand, Thekvar admitted. We killed thousands of your people. We destroyed your colonies. We declared your entire species unfit for existence. How can you offer us mercy? Commander Jihye, who had been quietly reviewing security reports, looked up from her tablet. She was younger than the Admiral, probably in her 30s, with the kind of calm confidence that came from never having lost a battle. General, can I ask you something? She said. Why did your people start conquering other worlds in the first place? Thekvar considered the question carefully. Resources, territory, the natural order of things, the strong dominate the weak. And how has that worked out for you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thekvar thought about the past 6 months, watching his supposedly invincible military machine get torn apart by humans who fought with creativity and joy instead of rigid doctrine. Not well, obviously, he admitted. The galaxy is enormous, Jihi continued. There are billions of star systems, countless planets, and resources beyond imagination. There's enough for everyone if we're willing to share and cooperate instead of fighting over scraps. Admiral Sunwoo leaned forward. General, we didn't fight this war because we hate the Velkan people. We fought because you threatened innocent civilians, our families, our children, our friends. Once that threat was eliminated, the war was over, as far as we were concerned. But the destruction, the humiliation of defeat, Thekvar protested, was necessary to stop you from hurting more people, Sunwoo interrupted. Nothing more, nothing less. We dismantled your military infrastructure and neutralized your ability to wage aggressive war, but we have no interest in ruling over you or making you suffer, she gestured to the treaty documents. These terms are designed to help your people rebuild and find a better way forward. We're offering technology sharing, educational exchanges, and economic partnerships. We want to turn former enemies into future allies. Thekvar picked up one of the documents and read it more carefully. The humans were offering to help repair the damage from the war, provide medical aid to Velkan civilians, and even assist in establishing a new, more peaceful government. This is unprecedented, he said slowly. In all my years of military service, I've never seen a victorious army offer such generous terms to a defeated enemy. Maybe that's because you've never fought humans before, Commander Jihi said with a slight smile. We're a strange species, General. We can be absolutely ruthless when someone threatens our families, but we can also be surprisingly forgiving when the fighting stops. Admiral Sunwoo stood up and walked to the room's viewport, looking out at the Velkan homeworld below. General, your people have a choice to make. You can cling to the old ways, conquest, domination, and endless war, or you can try something new, cooperation, mutual respect, and shared prosperity. She turned back to face him. The galaxy has room for both humans and Velkans. We just needed to establish some ground. Rules first. For the first time in his long military career, General Thekvar began to think that perhaps there was a better way to live than constant warfare. 6 months had passed since the end of the Velkan War, and Captain Minho was still getting used to his new assignment. The Galactic Defense Station at Vega was unlike anything he had ever seen, a massive facility that combined human engineering with alien technology, creating something that was both beautiful and intimidating. The station served as a symbol of the new galactic order. Instead of one species dominating others through force, different civilizations were now working together for mutual protection and prosperity. It was an experiment that many thought would fail, but so far it was succeeding beyond everyone's expectations. Minho's bridge crew was a perfect example of this new cooperation. Half his officers were human, while the other half came from various alien species, including several former Velkan warriors who had chosen to serve alongside their former enemies. Captain, the night shift reports are ready for your review, said Lieutenant Minji, his communications officer. She was teaching basic Korean to Commander Vexthal, a former Velkan military leader who now served as the station's tactical advisor. Your pronunciation is improving, Commander, Minji said encouragingly to the large insectoid alien. Try saying, good morning again. Vexthal's mandibles clicked as he attempted the human words. Johan Machim? Perfect. You're learning faster than most humans learn Velkan. Minho smiled as he watched the unlikely friendship develop. 6 months ago, these two species had been trying to kill each other. Now they were sharing language lessons and cultural traditions. It gave him hope for the future of galactic civilization. That hope was tested when Ensign Soo-young suddenly looked up from her sensor station with a worried expression. Captain, I'm detecting something unusual on long-range sensors. There's a large fleet approaching from the Outer Rim territories. Approximately 500 vessels of unknown design. The bridge fell silent. Everyone remembered how the Vulcan War had started with a similar unexpected arrival, but this time things were different. Instead of panic, there was calm professionalism as the crew prepared to handle whatever was coming. "Are they responding to our communication attempts?" Minho asked. "Negative, sir. They're ignoring all hails and maintaining an aggressive formation." From the Vulcan section of the bridge came a sound that took Minho a moment to recognize. It was Commander Vexthul, making the chittering noise that served as Vulcan laughter. "Something amusing about this situation, Commander?" Minho asked. Vexthul's compound eyes gleamed with what looked suspiciously like anticipation. "I was simply wondering, Captain, whether we should warn these newcomers about what they're getting themselves into, or if we should let them learn about human defensive capabilities the hard way." The comment drew chuckles from both human and alien crew members. Everyone on the station had heard the stories about humanity's creative approach to warfare. The galaxy had quickly learned that humans were not a species to be underestimated. Minho opened a communication channel to Earth. "Command. Admiral Sunwoo, this is Galactic Defense Station Vega. We have a potential situation developing. Unknown fleet, 500 vessels, approaching Terran colonial space with apparent hostile intent." Admiral Sunwoo's voice came back clear and relaxed, as if she were discussing the weather instead of a possible military threat. "Copy that, Captain. What's their estimated strength?" 500 ships, ma'am. Unknown technology level, but they're maintaining attack formation and refusing to communicate." There was a brief pause. Then Sunwoo's voice returned with unmistakable amusement. "Only 500. Captain, I was hoping for a real challenge this time. It's been 6 months since we've had a proper military exercise." Minho couldn't help but grin at his admiral's casual confidence. "Orders, ma'am?" "Begin standard first. Contact protocols, but keep all weapon systems ready for immediate deployment. And Captain, make sure to record everything for the Galactic Council. Some species only learn through direct experience, and we want to have good footage for the educational archives." As the bridge crew began preparations for what was becoming an unfortunate galactic tradition, Minho reflected on how much had changed since the Vulcan War. Humanity had spent 3 centuries trying to be peaceful explorers and diplomatic neighbors. But the galaxy kept reminding them that sometimes the only language that aggressive species understood was overwhelming force. The humans had reluctantly accepted their new role as the galaxy's peacekeepers, the species that other civilizations called when they needed someone capable of stopping bullies and tyrants. It wasn't the future they had originally wanted, but it was the future the galaxy apparently needed. "All stations report ready, Captain," Lieutenant Minji announced. "Very good. Let's see if these newcomers are interested in peaceful contact, or if they need a more direct lesson in galactic diplomacy." Minho settled back in his command chair, surrounded by his mixed crew of humans and former enemies who had become trusted allies. Sometimes, he reflected, the galaxy needed monsters, and humanity had proven very good at being the right kind of monster when necessary,